All right, here we go. I'm here with Jeanette Terry, aka Aunt Jeanette, Mrs. T, Mrs. Terry, the legend in the building. Wow. How do you feel?
I wasn't expecting that kind of announcement, but I feel great. I feel okay.
You've been through a lot. A lot. You have a true testimony. Still rolling. The wheels are. I don't think the wheels are ever gonna fall off.
Well, I hope not. I'm one of them people that want to live to 100 and something, Now, there are some exceptions to that. I want to be in my right mind. I want to still be able to get around and do a few things now, just be able to still... Basically, I want to live and be at home, I don't want to be in nobody's institution or... nursing facility, anything like that.
I can see that happening because you're still pushing, you're still doing it, and throughout all the adversity, you're still winning.
I'm trying.
Can you explain to it how important it is to be independent and just to be in a wheelchair and just be independent? Because there's a lot of people. Well, I don't know. I see a lot of people out here that are functional now. It's not like the old days.
Oh yeah, and that's a blessing.
Where
it's just like, you can answer that question by just basically looking at yourself. Anybody that's able-bodied and that's walking around and doing what they do, you can pretty much answer that question just by, like I said, looking at yourself, because you like being independent. You like being able to drive. You like being able to go places and do what you want to do. Same thing as being in a wheelchair, and even more so because you're missing those limbs. You're missing those lower limbs of that movement. So it is so important to be able to drive and just be able to do some of the normal things that you did before, you lost control of your lower, part.
Can you explain what was life like for Jeanette coming up before the accident? We're going to get to that, but what was life like for Jeanette coming up as a young lady, true adolescent years, and, kind of even going back to childhood? What was life like for you?
Well, you were really asking some questions I wasn't prepared for, but I guess going back to when I was a kid, that was rough too, because I was dorky. I wore glasses from the age of 6 months old, so I always had to have glasses on. And of course, back in the, the late 60s, 70s, that kind of thing, you always got the, the four-eye jokes and all of that kind of thing. And, so that kind of made you feel a little inferior right there. And then growing up, I guess, in the adolescence, it was basically the same thing. You're really feeling, inferior, with all the changes that come to your body. And then, there are other girls that are looking, just great. And you're wondering, well, what happened to me? How come I'm not developing like that? So, it was all those kind of changes. But I think really and truly, the one class that really helped me, 2 classes basically, especially when I got to high school, was ROTC and English. So those classes, I think, really, in history, I have to mention that one too, because I think those classes really brought a lot of my intellect, my inner intellect out, and that was something I needed back then. So
going to school, you say you were bullied a lot?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Especially back then, wearing glasses and whatnot.
Right, and especially, just like kids today, if you don't have the newer clothes, my clothes were usually thrift store clothes, so, and if you don't have newer stuff and, the finer things, I think actually it's gotten better, because now the younger generation, they don't mind saying they shop at the thrift store. Some of them love it, but back when I was coming up, that just meant you were poor and you didn't have nothing, so.
The demographic has definitely changed.
Oh, definitely.
Is there any time being teased, did you ever lose your cool? Did you ever have to whoop somebody up? And did you win?
Well, I did have a little incident. It was I think I was about in the fourth grade. Yes, I rode the bus. No, I wasn't in the fourth. I had to take that back. Sixth grade. I was going to. I was in a Catholic school, Father Benedict Justice, and I just happened to be riding. I was quiet. I didn't bother nobody. And other kids didn't want to play with me. Nobody wanted me to do anything. So I just had my books. I read my books at recess on the playground. I stayed to myself. So there you go. You don't have to pick on Jeanette. I'm out the way. I'm not bothering anybody. And I guess they had called us to line up because it was time. Recess was over. It was time to go in. Well, I didn't hear it the first time, and then I heard the second time. I'm like, oh my God, I hurry up and put my book up and ran to get in line. And this particular young man had tripped me. And I mean, my leg was skinned up so bad. It hurt so bad. I could barely walk. The teacher didn't even really discipline him, didn't really do anything to him. Everybody was laughing. And I'm in so much pain because I was running, and the way he tripped me, I kind of slid, and now my leg was just really messed up. So that next day, I got out, school was out, went home, I was so mad. And the next day I came back with a butcher knife, because see, I used to sit up front right behind the bus driver. So that way they couldn't mess with me. Nobody caused trouble. I sit behind the bus driver. But I went all the way to the back of the bus, and I put that knife up to his throat. And I told him, if you ever mess with me again, I will kill you. And the bus driver, she just couldn't believe it, because I wasn't that type of kid. I was quiet, I was nice, I was dorky looking, I didn't mess with him. I think I must have. She was in total shock, but she, and I'm thankful to her to this day, because she was supposed to by law turn me in to the principal. Police should have came out, that kind of thing. She just told me, but see, back in that time, that was the 70s, so it was a little more like, she just told me, hey, you can't ride the bus no more, so that was messed up, because that was a long little walk, so I really messed myself up for real. So but I didn't have no problems with the kid no more. He didn't bother me. I think they thought it down, and I went from dorky and to crazy real quick. So
everybody can be pushed. Everybody got them triggers, and evidently you had them triggers back then. So just how it is. Everything was
how that went.
Like you said, everything was a little bit more lax in the 70s.
Right, but it's not now, right? Because the bus driver, she just said, "Hey, you cannot." She was so shocked, but I think she understood, just like what you said. She could see that I had been pushed. I had been pushed to my limit, and that was just the limit, because I didn't do anything to these kids, and for that particular kid to just trip me, and cause that kind of damage, it was like, you didn't have to do all that.
So, coming up as an adolescent,
mm-hmm.
What was life like that? You're coming into your own. Did you ever get out of the stage where you're coming up as a woman, developing everything else?
Mm-hmm.
What were the men like back then, or were you being chased by a lot of men? What were some of your friends and cousins like? Because back in the 70s, I'm sure you had a swagger,
The 80s, 70s I was more a kid. The 80s was more...
Yeah, more the 80s.
Let's go the late 70s and early 80s.
Yeah, let's go to then and explain what type of woman was Mama Jeanette.
I was just cool. I've always been a laid back person. I ain't a person who really had a lot of friends. So, as far as doing the normal high school stuff that people do, being on committees or whatnot, I wasn't even that type of female, basically. I just, like I say, I will admit, in high school, I really didn't show up, so the school that much. I did just enough so I could keep up with my homework or whatever, but I really didn't show up, and I'm not proud of that, but, that it is, that's my life story. It is what it is, so. But I think when you do things fast, you grow up fast, and that's really just kind of what happened to me. I had a kid. I had a child at 16. So, I was 16 years old when I had your sister. So, I mean, so that at that point, it grew me up real quick. Grew me up real quick.
What was life like that, having a child at 16 and just dealing with everything that came with it? And how did your parents react? How did your siblings react? What was the status like with the daddy at the time? Explain all of the adversities and the happiness that you had having your first kid, but dealing with the everyday situations of family, daddy, the kid itself being so young. How did it mash you as a person? How did you go through it?
I mean, being young, it was hard because, again, 16, thank God I was, job age. I could, get a job. And, and as far as the father, her father, he was young too. We're both basically the same age. So, I mean, it's shocking for him, shocking for me, because you go through a pregnancy, there's no baby yet. But when a baby actually comes and it's live and you see it there, now you really do understand that you really have another person, another human being that you have to be responsible for, that you have to take care of. So, I mean, and I think both of us grew into those roles, but, and like I said, I can't really say anything bad about the father because I made a lot of mistakes, If you would have came to me years ago and had me do this interview, I would have never admitted to such a thing. But I did. I made a lot of terrible, horrible mistakes with that situation as far as how I handled things. Now, that's, I can't go back and change anything at this point, but, I have apologized, and I'm glad I'm still able, I'm glad I was able to apologize. So that's the beauty of that. But going back to that, back then, I basically dropped out of school. I worked 2 jobs. I worked for KU Medical Center. I was a file clerk in the housekeeping department and at the IRS. I was a file clerk. I basically worked in the warehouse. So, that was my job there. So it was, the money, I received, I can say I received government assistance for maybe 3 months. And I realized that is not my lifestyle. I did not want to get into that government assistance trap, getting these little welfare checks every month, a little bit of food stamps. You're barely making it to the next month and all of this. So for me, it was real easy choice. I rather work, so that's why I dropped out. But actually, I was very blessed because I didn't even realize it at the time that I really officially decided to drop out. I really had enough credits to graduate. So that's what really saved me, was that diploma, because I really had, and back then you had to have a diploma just to be able to mop and sweep their floors, you had to have that diploma. So it was very, I was very blessed to have it, and that was just that just set my career off, I started out, I started out cleaning. Now this is when I was pregnant with our producer over here.
Oh, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Okay. We'll get to all that.
Okay.
So, working 2 jobs.
Yeah.
Did you always even though 16, it seemed like you're handling business.
Mm-hmm.
I always had and it seemed like working these 2 jobs, you always had money, very independent, even at that age.
Oh yeah, I had to. I had made up my mind, and not putting any of my children's fathers down, not at all. But this was just me as a woman and as a mother, that my kids weren't going to want for anything, and I was going to make sure that they had what they needed, and as every generation, we try to do a little bit better than what our parents did for us. So that was my goal, and I wasn't just going to be dependent on somebody to do that. In order to make sure it happened, I was going to make it happen. So there it is.
So you always had the independent mind state, which traveled with you into the day.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So your daughter turns 2.
Mm-hmm.
When did you end up meeting Jackie Terry Sr.?
Oh gosh, I met him, when I was 13. We go way, 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 way back, in the game, So it was, we knew each other for a long time. And that was.
So it was already a spark.
Yeah, first love type of thing.
It was already a spark. He was always around, and initially, you do have a kid, and your whole life changed after that.
Oh yeah.
After the kid was born. Can you explain that fateful day when your second child was born? What exactly were you doing? What was going on through your mind?
Well,
what was that day like for Jeanette Terry that essentially just changed your life forever?
Well, now here's the thing, because God is great, and I'll tell you why. But I can remember everything I did up and and really until the minute of probably till the actual time of the accident. That's what I don't remember. I have never been able to remember that, but I think that's God's blessing in not having me remember impact and all of that kind of thing. So basically I was working at KU. And by this time I started off cleaning the garage, the parking garage, the main visitor's garage that sits right directly across from KU. And that was part of facility operations back in the day. So that was my job. People would have thought I was a young man because I had, and I was the type of female that had a lot of hair. I had long hair. But you wouldn't know it because I would wear this skull cap and I have all my hair tucked under. So a lot of people mistook me for a short guy, but that's funny. But like I say, I did that but at this point I was pregnant. At the time I got pregnant. So I knew I could not stay in that job, and my supervisor did not want me in that job. Now we're in the 80s, you have to think. So we're at a time when women are fighting for their rights when it comes to being pregnant and being on the job and being able to have leave and take off and that kind of thing. So I always kept myself educated. I always knew my rights. And even back then, I was still dorky because I was one of those people in the 80s. And even as a kid, would watch the world news. I was always interested in stuff like that. So I always kind of kept up and knew my rights and things that, and I kept up what was going on. So I knew they couldn't fire me. So I started looking for, of course, work internally within the hospital. And they had a dispatcher position in the security department. I thought, of course, I don't know nothing about that. I ain't, but they train you and everything like that. And man, that's what started my career. That's what got me into law enforcement. So again, another blessing because it was, like I say, I stumbled upon a career. That's exactly what I did. So, and didn't realize it. But I wanted to be a police officer. At that time, you had to take the civil service test, and then there was other things, you did have to go to the academy and that kind of thing. But I had an accident. I was hit by the bus. Like I said, I don't remember the actual point of hit, the impact of the bus hitting me or anything like that. But I know I was tired because during that time period, I was working 16-hour shifts. And like I said, I was just tired. And I think that played a big part in decision making. I went through a light that was yellow that turned red within the intersection, and it led to, an accident. And, the bus was at fault because they were, speeding. They had stopped to pick up a passenger, but their light had turned green, so they're speeding up to catch their green light. So it was just, just wrong timing altogether, So that's kind of where I'm at, and when I found out what happened, it's just, I don't know. I just jumped into, I got to deal with it, and that's what I did.
So being in a hospital, you knew you was pregnant with a son. Mm-hmm. So my thing is, seeing the baby come out, but in critical or life-threatening conditions, what was on your mind in holding that baby in your arms for the first time? What was that feeling like knowing that you were still alive and your child was still alive? Because both of you could have been killed.
Well, let me correct you on some things. First of all, I had an emergency C-section. I was in a coma. I was out. I did not even know what was going on. Okay, I had several surgeries. I was a trauma patient. I was hit by a metro bus. I had several surgeries in one night, basically. And the first surgery, of course, was the emergency C-section, was to save you. I did not see you, actually physically get to see you until you were a month old. I mean, that, the nurses, and by this time, you had became the nurse, because I was, like I said, kind of in a coma, in and out of consciousness. I wasn't aware of what was going on, and it took me a month to really get it together, and that's when they were bringing you down, and we started bonding and doing our thing. And by that time, in a month, the nurses they loved you. God, the nurses, oh my God. What do you say, a ladies' man? I guess you could say you started that at birth, because oh my God, the nurses would go crazy. They'd be like, oh, he's with his mom. Well, go get him. How long is she at him? I'm like, they loved you. So,
right. So finally healing up, coming home with your brand new son, adjusting to life, a new life. In a wheelchair, and particularly a new husband, spouse. What was life throughout the years
and
like?
Your sister, don't forget that you're leaving out Nikki,
and a brand new 2-year-old and the 2-year-old. So coming home, what was your feelings like? Actually getting a chance to finally come home, get out that hospital. And throughout the years, what was it like adjusting to that new life, raising a newborn and a 2-year-old?
Oh, wow. Now, I'll admit, of course, I would think about how, when you're in a wheelchair, you're constantly thinking. You're always thinking about, how will I do things? How can I improve? How can I make things better? But I was scared, of course. I was nervous. This was all new to me. I didn't know what I would do. This is all new. So I was really scared and nervous. But I have to admit, my 2-year-old, and in some ways I do feel bad about this as a parent, but my 2-year-old really became my number one, my right hand, because she helped me out so much. Just being a 2-year-old, just by saying, hey, go get this for me, go get that for me, do this. She learned at a young age, and she really helped me out. And sometimes, like I say, sometimes that's good, but a lot of times that can be bad. So, but I'm thankful. I am so grateful that I was able to have that help. And even throughout the years, as you said, just being a parent now, of course, after, I've been in this chair for, 36 years old? 36 years. So, as throughout the years now, of course, I got used to it. I got adjusted to my situation, and I quickly, even after a year after being in this wheelchair, I got my license and learned how to drive. And that was the big independent thing for me, because I don't like, people feeling like they have control over you. And when you can't do certain things or for yourself, people can use that as their form of control to make you feel like, well, hey, you need me and you can't do this without me. And I don't like that. I'm very independent. I like going when I want to go. I like doing things when I want to do them. I had 2 kids. I wanted to make sure that even though I can't do a lot of physical activities that I would have loved to have been able to do with them, I wanted to be able to at least be able for us to go places and take them different places, and we just be able to have fun that way. And that's what I tried to do.
So, learning how to drive again, getting your license, the hand controls, the lift. How did it feel just learning how to drive again and just getting your sense of independence back and going where you wanted to go?
Oh, absolutely great, because even though with everything I have been through and all that I went through, driving is just such a privilege and a blessing, because like I said, that's where your true independence comes from, because you can, like I say, to be able to get behind the wheel of that car and be able to, I can go out of town if I want to. I can, simply just go up the street to the grocery store. What a blessing just to be able to do that. And when you're in, because I've been a lot of pointed times in my life where I didn't have a vehicle, so I was in a position to where my chair was my vehicle, my power chair anyway, and I was in a manual chair for a long time, which a manual chair was good because it kept me in shape. It kept me more physically fit. But as I started getting sicker and having more surgeries and things like that, the power chair became my best friend. It became an asset in one of my many tools, because it allowed me to be able to go, like I say, if I need to go to the grocery store and I need to go get some things so I can have them, I don't have to constantly feel like I have to call someone. I have to be dependent. Can you take me here? Can you go here? Can you do that? Because no matter how much people love and care about you, and they really do, but we are all human, and sometimes you just don't feel like all that. You just want to go home and do you, and there is nothing wrong with that feeling. So it makes me feel good to know that I can go and get what I need, and I didn't have to bother or ask anybody to help me with it.
Exactly. The sense of independence.
Right. That's just part of being independent, right?
So, being independent, rolling, being a dispatcher at the Kansas City Police Department, overcoming all odds in general. Have you ever went through depression, or have you ever felt suicidal, or felt like people didn't love you the correct way? What was marriage and relationships, even friendships, even work friendships, family, has all that played a toll on you, and just depression, just because it's tough and you're a very strong individual.
I feel like I went through 22 years of depression, and I really hate that, because the ones that suffer the most was, I feel like, my kids, because kids, you cannot think that they don't understand, they don't see, they don't feel because everybody, when someone is depressed and severely depressed, and y'all in the same household, everybody's gonna feel it. Everybody's gonna know it. And for 22 years, I feel like I lived that kind of lifestyle. Now, when I went to work, I always kept a happy face on. And for the most part, I am a happy, upbeat person. I ain't gonna lie and say that. I don't want to make it sound like I'm, just down all the time either. But for a long time, my depression would come out in the way that I would treat myself, or the things that I would do for myself, like maybe not caring for my health the way in a better way, because I really think had I been more in tune to me and my health, and really taking care of myself, especially mentally, because I really needed to talk to someone professionally back then, and I never did. I went years without ever talking to anybody professionally and letting them know, because I think that can be sometimes a race thing too, because in our cultures, some of us are not brought up to have that, and that's not just a black person thing, that's just in every race. I think we have, especially poor people, we're not brought up to think we should have professional help or go seek professional help. And especially during that time era, back in the 70's, the 80's, and even the early 90's, things started changing, of course, the mid 90's and toward the 2000s, the whole different culture. So
I'm running out of time on this. So, dealing with depression, overcoming it for 22 years. When did it finally feel like you found your light and you found your purpose and got out of that depression? Who actually changed it? What actually clicked in your mind to get out of it and really love Jeanette for Jeanette?
Well, actually, God. And I won't lie and say the relationship when that I had began with a gentleman that I'm with now, that helped a lot too, because I was by myself for a long time, and loneliness can contribute a lot to depression. And of course sometimes you can, I know you can think about people in a way, or I had friends or people that I used to think maybe it could be something more than friends, and they're not feeling that way, but you are, and now you feel and it was really good. But God and me and myself, first of all, I made the decision to love myself for who I am. And once you make that decision to love yourself for who you are, where you're at now, all the things that are wrong with you, once you make that decision, nobody can take that away from you. So I really contribute the change in myself and God. Because without those two, without me participating in God's help, I would not have made the changes and been able to deal, to realize depression isn't the way, It's just, it's really a big distraction, and all you're doing is hurting yourself, You're not going to gain anything from it. So you might as well learn to love yourself for the way you are, for who you are, and, basically that's basically it.
It's all about loving yourself for who you are, because we ourselves can be our own worst enemy.
Oh, definitely.
We can really destroy ourselves, and the mind is a powerful thing. So when you remain trapped in that paradox of your own mind and self-doubt, guilt, depression, you become the enemy.
Oh yeah, definitely. You really, exactly. So, yeah, it's everything starts with mental. Everything starts with your mental insight, how you feel about yourself mentally, and that's with anything, how you feel about yourself mentally, and even different things in life that you're approaching. You have to have a good mental insight about things, and physically everything else can line up, but it all starts mentally, how we think.
Yes, the mind is very powerful, and the mind controls the body.
Exactly.
And the spirit controls your
everything.
Will,
right.
Everything.
Exactly.
You have to have those three principles: mind, body, and spirit. Once you're able to connect those three together, you become a powerful person, no matter who you are. Mm-hmm. It's just believing yourself and manifesting your good heart into everybody around you.
Exactly.
So, we're kind of reaching the closing statements. Mm-hmm. I got to interview you again because I'm running out of time. So we'll be back with another part 2 of Jeanette Terry, the life story, if you want to see. But this was a really good interview. I learned a lot of good insight. For you, and we'll keep it going. We'll keep it going for the next one.